West Valley City Council. This is our regular meeting place, referred to as the anchor location. And so for those who are listening in, we announced that our anchor location is available here at the city offices. People can attend. We do remind those who come that if they have not been vaccinated, we do ask that they wear masks and practice social distancing. We are still in the final stages of the pandemic, and so we'll see how that ultimately works out. With that, we note that we have all council members in attendance. We do and are still continuing electronic participation. 2 of our council members will be participating electronically, as well as the public may also listen in. I believe it's, let's see, it's on YouTube. Yeah. So people can still participate that way. And we will still, my understanding, have public participation electronically in our public commentary. And those who participate in public hearings, so that we still have that. All right, with that then, let's see, we have our minutes of May 25th for action by the council.
Move for approval of the minutes.
Second. Property before us. Here, let's see. We will continue to use the kind of different way of on these just accepting if there are no votes rather than doing actual voice vote, since we still have those who are electronic. So without objection, the minutes will be approved. Hearing no objection, that's unanimous. Then we have next reviewing our agendas for our meetings later tonight. On our regular city council meeting, there were the one adjustment where there were the 2 options on there for, let's see, GPZ-5, no, I'm on the wrong 4. Okay. GPZ-4. Any questions on that? Any discussion? How about on any of the other meetings? There were no changes.
I just wanted to make a comment just in case somebody didn't realize what was going on with that change, Mayor. So it wasn't a change. Instead of what we had done as staff is as per the council's request or agreement or direction, as I understand from last week when I wasn't here, we've included the first ordinance as it was written last week and a second ordinance with proposed change, including a development agreement change, if I remember correctly. Is that what it was?
Removal of property.
Removal of property from the list, right, because of the development agreement negotiation later. And the staff's recommendation, or as we understood it as directed by you, we were able to accomplish that, is ordinance number 2. And there's 2 of those, one for the general plan, one for the zone change. So that's the change.
Hearing no further comments or questions, then we will go to the next item on our agenda. We have 2 public hearings scheduled for next week. The first one is with regards to the Community Development Block Grant, the funding allocation for that during our 2021-2022 action plan. So, and with that, we will consider resolution 21-88 and 21-89 for next week. So with that, who's going to review this?
he is here. So we'll have him come up.
Oh, there he is. I haven't been in here so long. I forget everybody. Well, I forget it. Good to see we're socially distancing.
Farther than before.
I need something other than my reading glasses to see all those. Mayor and Council, good to be with you. We're bringing to you this CDBG recommendation for this year as a result of some of the requests you made last year on how we list the different organizations that have requested funding. We've included the funding requested for this year, what the awards were from last year, and then what the funding request is for this year. This is typically a fairly routine item. Last year was rather unique because HUD removed the 15% cap on public services. And so that being a kind of a once in a lifetime shot, we funded all the applicants in the public services category last year. That has not been continued by HUD. The only other difference is we brought $1 million forward from our account to fund the bike park, which is why our allocation and the recommendation is for 2 million. It's typically right about 1.3. That's really all I have.
Okay, so I have a question, Lanny, and I think you've already answered it, but I was a little concerned that so many organizations that we funded last year just dropped completely off. And that was because of this cap that was reimposed upon us. Is that right?
I think there's a number of issues in play. We didn't get the applications this year that we got last year for some reason. I really anticipated getting a whole lot more applications simply because so many had been successful last year, but that for whatever reason, it didn't translate to this year. Now, that could be faced with the daunting federal regulations that we foist on them on some of those one-time applicants. They decided they didn't want to go through that again. But we very much had a reduced applicant pool for this year is also a significant part of it.
Any other comments? Well, I'll do a test on that.
I was just gonna ask, do you anticipate at the public hearing us having the same attendees like we used to do before last year, or how's that shaping up, Blaine?
We've had Peggy Daniel, who's our new CDBG coordinators, fielded multiple phone calls from different organizations inquiring about, why were they or were they not recommended for funding. And I'm sure that they will show up either to thank you for consideration or thank you for funding, and in hopes that they get a shot at it next year.
Okay. Now, I actually haven't in here tested to see if our council members who are online, I want to make sure that if they want to speak, maybe Councilman Nordfeld, would you just make a comment? It doesn't matter, on a baseball game or whatever, just so I can see, or that I can hear. He's waving.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay. Wow. I had to double check that because I'm having some other issues here. Thank you, Councilman Northside. With that then, thank you. Mr. Morris, we'll go on to the next item on our agenda, which is application GPZ-5 2021 filed by Jason Kelly. Let's see, general plan change, zoning change for property at 3536 South, 1950 West. In conjunction with that, next week we will consider ordinance 21-32, 21-33, and resolution 21-9. 1.71 acres of property. And so, saying this is
I believe it's Ms. Knapp's going to present for this item, Mayor. So Jody, if you can hear us, why don't you go ahead?
okay.
All right, hello, everybody. Share my screen here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. There we go. And I don't know if it's sharing the Zoom screen too, but there we go.
We can see the presentation, Jody.
Okay, so this application, as you mentioned, it's a general plan zone change, and the property is located at 3536 South, 1950 West. This property is the Superior Water location, and sorry, start my slides over here. So it's right on 1950 West, just off of 3500 South. And so just for a little bit of context, you have the $1 million pond on the corner. There's a new auto service center, retail center on the corner there. And then you have, it's surrounded by auto uses, including the KDA office park to the south. And so this application is a rezone from C2 to M manufacturing, and then a general plan change from general commercial to light manufacturing. And so part of the application, so the Superior Water use itself has been at this property for about 20 years. And they recently went through just some corporate changes. And so they reapplied for their business license application. So when a site review is conducted, we noticed there was quite a bit of outside storage on the site. And so in talking with Superior Water, just their use has changed over the last 20 years, and just how they operate their business has changed. And so they just approached the city about possibly rezoning this property to manufacturing. So you can see it's surrounded by the C2 general commercial zone. And then to the south there is that portion that is zoned manufacturing. That came before you guys in 2019. And that was a similar situation. There's an auto repair center there that Joe Cunningham and Delau Billings operate. And so they requested the manufacturing zone. So again, it's pretty similar to this one. But so Superior Water, this is their headquarters. And you can see from the front, they have nice landscaping, and it just has the office appearance in the front of the site. But then in the back, they have quite a bit of fleet vehicles that are stored there. And then they also started a recycling program. And so Superior Water, they're an HVAC, so water and air company. And so they're not like a metal recycling kind of facility, but they'll take equipment from a job and then kind of break it down. And then that's part of their recycling program that they've incorporated into their business. So they don't store that stuff outside overnight. It's just more of a working area outside. And then they also are working with the Salt Lake Community College. I guess they had a fire. And so they have their back warehouse building. They're letting the community college open up there for possibly up to 3 years. And they have their schooling program there. So it displaced some of their warehouse facilities. And so again, a little bit more stuff got moved outside, and they moved storage containers in there. So you can see on the top image there, that's the south end of the building. And so they just have a lot of their vehicles there. And then the north side is mostly the employee parking. And it is behind a fenced area. But as part of this review, if the property were rezoned outside storage, it would still be a conditional use in the manufacturing zone. So they would be required to come back to the Planning Commission to get approval. And at that time, we would review things like surfacing and screening and just appropriate areas for their outside storage. So just again, going through the site, they have some trailers that are there and just equipment that stays outside for more than 24 hours. So that's just not something that's allowed in a commercial zone. And the other difference with those two zones is a commercial zone requires more landscaped areas. So it's 15% versus a manufacturing zone, which is 5%. And so basically with them moving some equipment here, they've displaced their landscaping. So that would be another thing the Planning Commission would review, just to make sure, again, they have appropriate surfacing and they didn't just put stuff over what used to be landscaping. And then dumpster enclosures are a little bit different too for the manufacturing zone. If it's back behind the building and screened, they're not required to do a masonry enclosure, where they would be required to do that in a commercial zone. So just one more view from the street. This is their south yard area, so that would need to be screened a little bit better if it does get rezoned and go before Planning Commission. And then the last thing is this would be subject to a development agreement is the recommendation. And this is similar to that property to the south that got rezoned. So it'd be manufacturing zone, but it would prohibit basically everything not allowed in the C2 zone other than outside storage. So the exhibit here just lists the uses that are currently allowed in a manufacturing zone, but would be prohibited here. And that's just to ensure we don't have, as you can see, the uses listed here, just kind of more the heavy industrial type uses, because their intent is just to keep their office headquarters here and then just have a little bit more flexibility for outside storage, landscaping, and then dumpster enclosures. So this just shows their original site plan. And you can see in the back area here, kind of the top of the screen, that's where this used to be landscaped, which was a requirement of a commercial zone. But with the manufacturing zone, they could eliminate some of that and then just keep the landscaped areas up front to maintain that 5%. So that is the application. Are there any questions? I think I'll stop. Should I stop sharing, or do you want me to keep it up?
I guess you can stop sharing. If we need it, we can call it back.
Okay.
Your choice, Jody. We can see both. We can see you and the presentation, so it's fine either way.
Okay. Sorry, I turned it off.
Okay. One question I have, when I heard this presentation, it was very similar to the property that was just to the south here a couple of years ago. And I was fine with everything until you said they were doing recycling there. Typically, recycling is very messy. Places that I've seen, or the ones I've been to, are, there's pieces of stuff all over, and I am concerned. They're certainly not as big as other places, but I'm concerned about that being outside and allowing that there. Do you have any comments on that?
So they submitted a write-up that explained the process just in their own words. And they basically just said they started a recycling program where they break down and recycle precious metals from furnaces, water heaters, and air conditioners. But they said they use the outdoor space to tear the equipment down, but they don't keep anything outside overnight. And I think that's just more for security purposes. So when we did the site review, you couldn't really see that, but they did kind of have all that equipment piled up in the back there. But yeah, I don't think the intent of the outside storage isn't to have it be a big metal recycling facility. It's more for since they're displacing their warehouse and then they have their vehicles and some equipment that's kept out overnight. That's more the intent. But I mean, they did say part of the operations that changed was this recycling program.
So recycling is approved in a manufacturing zone. And in this case, if this were to go forward and be approved, they could do recycling.
Yeah, because they're not like a metal recycling salvage yard. It's just if they get equipment, and I could find out what the percentage of that is for their business. I think it's pretty small. It's just when they take stuff out, instead of just taking it directly to the landfill, they've been breaking that down a little bit more to recycle it. But I can find out from them how big of a part of their business that is. I don't think it's very large, but I haven't discussed that with them, that part in particular.
But it doesn't really matter, because if we allow recycling, then the next business, this agreement runs with the next business would be paper recycling, can recycling.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
they were out in the manufacturing area and surrounded on all sides, I wouldn't be as concerned, but for their C2 around much of it, that to me is a concern. I'm fine with the rest of it. It's just recycling I'm stuck you either recycle there or you don't. And they say we're only gonna do a little bit, but that doesn't mean either it's
Jody?
allowed or it isn't.
Jody,
Yep.
after they've torn it down and taken the precious metals and that they want to recycle out, what do they do with the rest of it?
I believe then that's taken to the landfill, so they sort it out, and so then the stuff that can be recycled, they recycle, and then the stuff that they can't, they take it to the landfill, and that's what they did before. It's just they're trying to now break that stuff down a little bit more.
Okay, so it isn't stored there until somebody can come and pick up the recycling and everything else.
No, they do have a cardboard recycler in the back, but that's typical, like any grocery store or commercial kind of use. They break down cardboard boxes and then have a recycler that comes and picks that up. So that's similar to like a trash service, but the metal and equipment, they recycle that on their own.
Okay, thank you.
So to clarify that, they don't store it there, can they store it there? Once they break it down, if they're allowed to recycle?
Yeah, so I think because it's not like open to the public that is their use, the primary use, the recycling. It's just an accessory part to their business. And so that's why that would just be covered under the outside storage and where they're breaking it down, and they're saying they're keeping everything inside. Mostly the outside storage is their equipment, their vehicles, they have trailers, they just do have some parts. They brought in a storage container to house most of the warehousing.
Can't we allow them to operate as they are operating with reclaiming precious metals without calling it recycling so that the next owner has a right to have a recycling plant there? Can't we just carve out for them that they can, I don't see that it's really recycling. They're not taking a can and making a new plant. They're just breaking the equipment down so they can reclaim precious metals. And if we don't call it recycling and allow them to do what they're doing, they don't have a recycling authorization that runs with the land, then I think we've solved everybody's problem.
Yeah, and I think that's how they are set up. It would just be more like outside storage, manufacturing, warehousing kind of use. It would just allow them a little more flexibility to have their equipment outside for more than 24 hours. And then the landscaping reduction. But I can even check with business licensing because I don't think they're licensed as some kind of metal recycler because there's bigger issues with that as far as tracking materials that businesses or people are recycling. So I don't even think it reaches that level where they're licensed as a recycler. They just mentioned that they've started doing that just as part of their day-to-day business, just to make sure they aren't bringing everything to the landfill. They're trying to sort it out a little bit more.
Right. I just think that from our perspective, or some of us at least, as long as the development agreement does not allow recycling for all the things that would fall within that definition, I think then it wouldn't be a problem. Right,
Yeah,
Mayor?
yeah, I'm fine with that. I just don't want it to be a junkyard or trash all over.
So
And if you're breaking things down, a lot of it turns into that. So if we're sure that that's not the case, then I'm fine, but maybe a little verification would be in order.
So can we put in the development agreement that a recycling center cannot be the major use of this property in the future? If the development agreement goes with the land, the primary use is not recycling?
Well,
In the,
recycling isn't allowable. Is it allowable in this location?
It would be allowable in manufacturing. So
and
what we
it's
do
not
is
on this
put recycling in the list of things that are not allowed.
for the primary use. And
Right,
then
and
as
then-
a side,
Well, there's a difference between breaking down your equipment or breaking down boxes and becoming a recycling location where you store all sorts of items outside. And I've been to a couple of the major recyclers and there's just no way around it. It just gets junky.
I think we just need to add recycling to the list of exhibit B that's not permitted with the zone change.
Just add it to
And
that.
I don't think that we define what they're doing, pulling a copper core out of something is recycling.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll
I
make
agree.
sure that's clear. And so I'll read through. So I have all those terms listed, and I'm feeling like metal recycling is covered under heavy industrial, but I'll just read through that and make sure. And then if anything does need to be added, I'll let you know. But yeah, that makes sense that we just don't want the metal recycling as a primary use.
okay. Anything else? Can I pause to look at our electronic screen to make sure our other council members aren't raising their hands or trying to get our attention? So with that then, all right. Thank you, Jody. We'll move to the next item, which is another public hearing. This is on application GPZ-7/2021, filed by Utah Auto Brokers. Looks like a general plan change and a zoning change at 3229 South Redwood Road. And okay, we've got you there on screen, but you're relatively new or infrequent. We'll have you introduce yourself. I tried to make everyone do it, but when we got names and when I introduced them, sometimes I didn't feel like I needed to make them introduce themselves. But welcome.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mayor. It's good to be with you. I'm Brock Anderson, a principal planner with Planning and Zoning in the CED department. Let me share my screen here. All right, are you all seeing that?
It's a black screen.
Says it started, but it hasn't loaded yet, Brock. If it's
Oh,
there,
there
you
it
go.
is. Okay, now, yes, we see a map or a
Okay.
aerial.
Okay, thank you. So as you mentioned, this is a general plan and zone change application. The request here is a general plan from low density residential to general commercial and a zone change from R112 spalling residential to C2 general commercial. And as you mentioned, the property is located at 3229 South Redwood Road. And there are 2 parcels as part of the request, totaling 1.29 acres. Just to get you oriented a little bit, again, the property's highlighted in red. You have Redwood Road there on the west. To the east on that parcel is the Beto's Restaurant, the one in the middle of the parcel to the west. To the north, you have the Vivant multifamily project. And then to the east, you have single family residential, as well as to the south, single family residential. As far as existing zoning on the property and surrounding, so again, existing zoning here, R112, there's also R112 zoning to the south. To the east, those homes are zoned R14. To the north, you have RM zoning, and then to the west, C2 zoning. Just a little history on the property and the adjacent property to the west. So the Domichel family has owned this property for many, many years. They, in about the 60s, they began an asphalt paving business that still has continued to be licensed and operate today. In 1993, they requested from the Board of Adjustment for a legal non-conforming use determination on that asphalt paving use. And so that, again, that request was for the parcel to the west that has the Beto's on it. They were successful in getting the non-conforming use determination for that property. And in conjunction with that, they requested an expansion of the non-conforming use, and that was for the subject 2 parcels. And so again, that allowed them to have truck and equipment and material storage. As you can see from the aerial, most of this property is kind of undeveloped. There's a few pieces of equipment and materials. And then if you'll notice on the bottom corner, there's a single unit dwelling that is there. And so again, that's just a backstory. And that, so again, in 93, they got that determination, and it's continued to operate that like that until today. So let me go to the next. So the proposal here again is for a C2 zone. Now, the proposal would not just be for the subject property, but they are proposing to redevelop a portion of the property to the east. So if you'll notice on the left side of the screen, the existing restaurant to remain, that would be the Beto's. And so they're proposing to leave that use there. And then a couple other buildings would remain on the north side, existing garage. There's an outbuilding that they would propose to keep. And then south of the Beto's, there's an existing home they are proposing to keep. What the proposal is here is this is a auto sales business. And so basically they would be operating an auto sales business on the property. And then there'd be a total of 5 dealership or office buildings. One would be converting the existing home into an office, and then they'd be building 4 additional office buildings. And they would be leasing out the other 4 buildings to different auto sales type businesses. And again, you've got Leicester Street there on the east side, so that the proposal would take this use clear up to Leicester Street, and then you have Redwood Road on the west. They're not proposing any new access off of Leicester, so it would all be from the existing access points on Redwood Road. Next, here's a few photos just of the site. So again, out on Redwood Road, looking north, you can see the Beto's in the distance. So the Redwood streetscape is existing in front of the Beto's, but not in front of the north part of the parcel or to the south. This is the existing home that they would leave on the property and would want to convert into a sales office. This is just looking from Redwood Road to the east through the Beto's parking lot. Again, the existing building that would remain. And then the building on the left is the garage that they're proposing to keep. The building to the right of that would be demolished as part of this proposal. This is from behind Beto's looking towards the east. Again, you can see there's a couple office buildings, kind of modular buildings that have been used for the asphalt business. And then in the background, you can see the existing single family home that would be demolished. Now we're going to move to the east edge of the property. So this is on the northeast corner looking south. So off to the right off screen would be the Vivant multifamily project right there. And again, the subject property looking south here. Again, this is on Leicester Street looking to the northwest. So there's the Vivant project. Now, when the non-conforming use was granted, one of the conditions was that they build a masonry wall along Leicester Street. And so that's the wall you see existing here today. Again, there is an existing access off of Leicester that would need to be closed off if the proposal was approved. Looking just into some of the outside storage that they've got on the existing parcel. And another photo, there's the existing home there. And then one final look just of the proposed site. And then one more slide just looking to the east. So this is along Leicester looking to the homes that are adjacent to this property to the east. Again, just back to the proposed plan. Now, the Planning Commission did recommend denial of the application. And because of this, we did not prepare a development agreement. But if the council feels like this is something that you'd like to approve, then as staff, we would recommend that if you were going to approve it, that you would table the application to give us time to prepare a development agreement. Again, if you were wanting to approve this, there'd be 3 items we'd recommend in a development agreement. First, to extend the Redwood streetscape along the entire Redwood Road frontage. Second would be with the existing buildings that would remain, that those are maintained and repaired where needed. And then third, in speaking with the Public Works Department, they would require additional right-of-way along Lester Street. If this were to develop back there, they would require a 5-foot park strip, a 5-foot sidewalk, and then we would require 20 feet of landscaping, and then would recommend requiring another masonry wall adjacent to that 20 feet of landscaping on the eastern portion. So that's the application. If there are any questions.
Council members?
I don't have a question, rather than a comment. I'm glad the planning commission denied it. I think this gets way too far into the neighborhood all the way to Lester Street, and to say that its addresses on Redwood Road is generous. And it's one thing to have businesses on both sides of Redwood Road all the way up and down, but right behind the businesses are residential, and I mean, if we let this go, this is gonna creep all the way to the river, and then we have these neighborhoods out.
Mr. Anderson? You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me a reason why the commission, maybe just tell me, not give reason, but you tell me the reason why the planning commission, they reject this one, reject this also.
Sure. I think there were similar hesitations to have the commercial extend all the way to Lester Street. The majority were hoping or wanting single unit dwellings to remain along Lester. I don't know that they were opposed to having the commercial extend a little farther to the east, but yeah, I think they were hesitant with it extending all the way to Lester Street.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, if you would go back up to a previous slide there, the one that shows the whole area and the different zoning.
So this is a zoomed in version of the zoning, but are you looking for this one?
Yes, that one, or at least I had one on the that we did, the one that you just had just before this. Yes.
This one?
No, that one right there, except can you go back out, make it smaller? I think that's a different.
It's slide 4.
One more.
Slide 4.
Is it the one that shows all of the Redwood zoning?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
You don't have-
let me pull that up. Sorry, 1 second.
This is the one that really caught my attention.
Are you seeing that now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one.
When I look at this slide, and I look there at the residential area shown that highlighted there in yellow, it makes it significantly different when I look at it here. The way that this is encroaching into the residential area, with it being to the south and certainly to the east for this residential area. That's where it highlights what I think Councilman Bueller was saying about it just really pushes into that residential area. Those look like really nice homes across the street. They weren't even small homes. And so, yeah, I'm quite concerned with it as well, I think. But that really highlights it for me when I see the red box that's going to change. Okay, that helped me, thank you. I just wanted to get that up there, and highlight that, so.
I have one question too, Brock, if I could. What dealerships are they looking at leasing out to?
I don't know that they might have people lined up. I mean, it would be all be used auto sales, I believe. But I don't know specific names.
It wouldn't be new dealerships because
No.
they're restricted by area. But it'd be a lot of used cars. What,
Yeah, used cars. And I know in speaking to the applicant, there was some concern with the planning commission that this was so far off Redwood, there's not much visibility. I guess, especially since COVID, there's been, online sales is so much more than it used to be. And so a lot of their initial contact is from online sales, and this would be more just to hold the cars there and people could come view them there, but.
I guess my concern would be what's the difference between that and all their asphalt equipment that they've stored out there?
Probably be better. But what else could, yeah, if this was changed, what other uses could they have there?
Yes, all the C2s.
Yeah.
Everything on that list, we weren't letting in the net last place. So,
I mean, I don't really think it's great what's there now, but if they could leave this property, they could subdivide it, they could buy it, they could sell the house there, like it's contemplated in the general plan of the zoning there. Certainly has more value probably than as it's being currently used. It's just what used to be allowed.
Well, I think that there's been a good discussion. Do we need any more clarification or information?
Mr. Anderson, I personally think if they clean it up really nice and it's better in the picture we have right now. Seem like you put two pictures right there, the previous one, I mean, the one they have right now and the future look very clean to me.
Yeah, I mean, they'd definitely be required to add landscaping and hard surfacing and things that aren't there now, but.
They did indicate, that they would, do the landscaping there on, I guess it's Lester Street on the back there and have, the park strip, the sidewalk, and then 20 feet of land.
Well, we need to, if we're going to allow it, we need to table it and do it up.
Oh, yes, definitely. But even with that, anyway. So I think, thank you, Mr. Anderson, that I think answers the questions. And with that, we'll head on down our agenda. Next, we have resolutions. We have resolution 21-91, entering into a development agreement with, and I may get this wrong, I apologize to the individual, but Meng Chao for 1.89 acres of property at 4914 West, 4700 South. And Mr. Pastrick is going to join us.
Thank you, Mayor. So this property is at 4914 West, 4700 South. It's just under 2 acres. And actually on the regular meeting tonight, we have a GPZ for 2021. This property is the property that as staff we had suggested be removed because of this development agreement. So similar to other properties we've recently brought before you where as staff, we were going to rezone them, but then as we approached the owners, they were willing to enter into a development agreement to follow our existing standards. So we took them out of the rezone. And so again, this is similar to, if you recall, there was a property, Sunrise Baptist Church on 4400 West, just south of 35th South, were similar situation.
Any questions on this? This is kind of a follow-up from those that we've done before to make sure we're able to have these developed in a proper way. Hearing no further comments. Thank you, Mr. Pastor.
Thank
We'll
you.
go now to resolution 21-92, to enter into a supplemental agreement between the city and Utah Transit Authority on 2700 West.
Thank you, Mayor. Dan Johnson, Assistant Public Works Director. So we're bringing before you an agreement with UTA. As you may recall, in 2018, the city and UTA executed an agreement. They're what they call the stakeholder agreement, and the first supplement for the 2700 West Bike Lanes project that goes from 4700 South to 4100 South. The city boundary is the city shares this road with Taylorsville City, and so most of these improvements happen on the west side of the road on 2700 West. And so this is a supplement to the original agreement executed. And as you may recall, the city worked with UTA to apply for a Tiger grant for the construction of improvements on 2700 West. And UTA has since procured a contractor. The design is complete and the right-of-way is acquired, as you've seen several right-of-way acquisitions come before you over the past several months. And so this is the final agreement. This modification of these agreements adds the funding necessary to complete the work. And so through this agreement, we'll add roughly $1.9 million to the project, and this project will we'll have bike lanes on 2700 West, and kind of a similar streetscape to what we constructed on 2700 West between 3500 South and 4100 South. So the street trees and lights and walls. So, and I will answer any questions you may have.
That's paid for with the Tiger grant.
The original, so there's about $1.3 million, $1.4 million in federal Tiger grant funds. And the city previously added roughly $300,000, and then we're adding $1.9 million in funds that will come from bonded transportation funds that the city will receive from House Bill 244. As you'll recall, the city council just recently approved a reimbursement resolution. The city council just recently approved a reimbursement resolution for the $1.9 million that will ultimately come out of bonded funds. But the reimbursement resolution will allow the city to pay for these, to pay UTA this $1.9 million immediately. Questions?
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now our communications, solid waste services.
Okay, so Mr. Williston's going to do this presentation, Mayor.
You need to unmute your microphone, unless he was just chewing gum or something.
Thanks for the reminder, Mayor. Is that better?
That is much better, yes.
All right, and I presume you can see a big red garbage truck on your screen as well.
That's right.
Okay. Well, this is just a quick update on where we're at with our garbage services. We gave a previous presentation to the council about 8 months ago, and we just wanted to give you a quick update on that. And if I can get my screen to advance, we'll do it. But for some reason, it's not doing that. So let me get out of here and see what's going on. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay, can you see my screen now?
No.
Okay, well, let me get back into Zoom. Okay, hopefully, you can- okay. Sorry about that. I was going to have this all ready to go, so we didn't have to bring it up, but that didn't work out so well. So anyway, we are approximately in halfway through our 6-year contract with ACE Recycling and Disposal, who provides all of our sanitation services in the city. We also have a team in the Public Works Department that oversees their work and manages their contract, and that's Ray Hinkle, who manages the day-to-day operations, dumpster placement, those kind of things. Paul Love, who's Ray's supervisor in sanitation and utility billing, and then the Public Works Director oversees the contractual issues that we have with ACE. Just to give you some idea of the magnitude of this contract, we have approximately 35,000 pickups every single week with just regular garbage collection, and then again almost that many again with recycling. So this is a large amount of work, and give you some frame of reference when we go to the next slide here and show you. So there's about 150,000 collections on the regular garbage every single week, and this is we were having some issues. The missed pickups were averaging around 100 back last summer and last spring. That number has dropped dramatically, but it's increased a little bit in the last few months, but still, I mean, just to keep in mind, this is less than half of a 10%. So it's 99.95% of the time the garbage is picked up on time. So things are going well with the contract and with the services being provided to our residents. One of the things that we were most concerned about when we first entered into this contract with ACE, they immediately came to us because recycling processing costs had increased dramatically. And we amended their contract and set a limit of $60 a ton for the processing costs, a maximum that the city was willing to pay. So back in the spring of 2019, you can see on that chart that we were bumping up against that $60 a ton regularly. And that has dropped dramatically in the last few months. And so this past month is the first time since we started this contract 3 years ago that we have not paid any recycling surcharge. The reason for that is, I will get to in just one second, but just to give you some idea, this is the amount, this is the percentage of material that's collected. So it's almost half cardboard. The second largest recyclable product is the mixed paper. And still, over a quarter of the material that's collected is trash and is hauled directly to the landfill. And we're not seeing that number really change dramatically. But what we are seeing a change in is the price of recycled commodities. So cardboard prices have almost doubled. in the last year, going from around $22 a ton up to the mid 40s. And mixed paper, the actually had a negative value, about a year ago, is actually has some value now. It's not terribly high, but some value is better than having to pay to get rid of it. So the recycling markets have improved dramatically when things originally were shut down because China quit taking that material. The local, or I shouldn't really say local, but the domestic recyclers have picked up and are accepting more of that material now, and there's a greater market for it. Just let you know where we're at with our fund balance for sanitation. And of course, we do charge fees for the garbage collection, and that money is held in a separate fund. That fund balance is a little over $1.5 million. We are currently, we set the fees so that we can keep them the same for a number of years. They're usually a little bit higher than our cost to start with, and then as costs increase, we start to eat into our fund balance, which we currently are with the proposed budget. We'll use about $400,000 from fund balance, but with the healthy fund balance we have, there'll still be 3 years before we need to do anything to as far as a fee increase. So somewhere in that 2 to 3 year range. We're also anticipating some increases in tipping fees and looking forward, but there's no immediate need for any kind of a fee increase. So that's the update. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer those for you.
Yeah, Russ, I'm still a little perturbed by the 28% of trash going into the recycling bins. Do you have any indication if that's just 28% of our bins, or are those bad actors that are just filling them with trash? Do you have any indication on that?
So we do monitor the recycling, and if we see egregious and obvious contamination in those containers, we do give the residents notices, and we've even, we don't take a lot of cans away, but we have done that in the past, and people are able to opt out of the recycling. The 28% contamination is not unusual, at least not in this valley. But Salt Lake City and West Valley City are the only two that monitor what goes in the recycling can at all. So, we're making not a huge effort, but some effort to try and, monitor what's going into those cans. It would take a lot more if we really were to, crack down on and, issue more warnings or take away cans for those who are contaminating that waste stream.
Mr. Williamson, the trash that is being disposed of, what types of items generally are there? They must not be paper or plastic or metals, cardboard. So what is it?
I've seen a bicycle in a garbage can, a recycle can, not a garbage can, a recycle can. I saw a bicycle.
Well, it's mostly metal.
But they don't take them, correct?
Right. Correct. People do put things like bicycles and other metals into the cans. With any processing facility, they want to have a standard, common homogeneous feedstock as much as possible. So you're correct. They don't want, even though you can take that bicycle to a metal recycler and maybe get $1 for it or something like that, it's not something that works well in a municipal recycling system. So much of the paper actually, Mayor, is contaminated because it gets dirty or gets food waste on it, and it goes into the recycling can anyway. So there's dirty diapers in there. There's, you name it, it's in the recycling cans.
Okay, so the question becomes, why do we have multiple items? It seems like cardboard makes sense to recycle. It actually seems to make sense. Paper doesn't when we've gone negative. Metals, because it's too many. Yeah. If it were little cans only, that'd be one thing. Plastics, I suspect there's a lot there that they can't utilize. So why do we try and recycle it?
You know, when we started the program, those were the things that were being recycled. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. Certainly the cardboard is the material that has the most value, at least, you know, overall. I mean, aluminum cans are worth the most. It costs less to recycle an aluminum can than it does to use virgin aluminum ore to make aluminum products. But, you know, it's a very good question. If the council would like us to look at modifying what's collected, we can certainly do that. It does present some problems with consistency between the other cities in the valley when others are accepting different materials. So generally, the recyclers have tried to stick to the materials that we're collecting now. And that's generally the case throughout the valley, but it's not 100%.
That's two questions. The first is, if we limit our recycling and say just cardboard and aluminum cans, do we really accomplish cleaning the recycling stream where people are throwing their garbage and diapers and grass clippings and stuff in there? If they don't care now, will they care then? And then the second question is, do we care? Because ACE is taking this and they're separating the garbage, they're recycling what they can anyway.
Right. So, I mean, I can't really answer the first question. I mean, that's a social behavior that who knows what people would do. But I mean, right now, there's not a huge financial incentive to the city to clean up our waste stream. And we are avoiding the surcharge just because the price of the materials has gone up. We'd have to renegotiate and look at things, look at our agreement with ACE to make it more worth our while if we're going to spend the effort to try and monitor and clean up that waste stream. Because right now, there's very little financial incentive to us to do that.
Interesting discussion. Not going to push anything. I think we're okay.
The next contract, probably.
Yeah.
This wasn't where the 28% trash was typical of that. So that,
Yeah. Well, and then another year or 3 years, it could be totally different.
sure.
Anything else? Hearing nothing else, then thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And we now have a scanner presentation or a video, I guess.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So we have a video that's been prepared for this. We also have Sergeant Johnson that's joining us by Zoom, not to present, but to answer questions as they come up after the video. So if the council is ready, we'll just share and present that video.
Hi, I'm Detective Sanford with West Valley Police Department. I'm here today to kind of demonstrate the features and the capabilities of the Leica RTC 360. We were called out today because We had a single vehicle that was speeding. Obviously, speed was a factor in this case. She lost control, went off the roadway and collided with the tree. We're going to go through the scanning of the scene and basically the overall processing of a major crash. So initially, when officers get on scene, me as an investigator, I process all of the evidence. As you can see, we have skid marks and other marks of the scene where the vehicle went off of the roadway. We place orange marker cones on the skid marks, road marks, scuffs, anything of evidence. We put on white paint so it'll reflect, and we get a clear scene line or evidence line. At the beginning of the evidence, we mark a half moon. That indicates the beginning of the line, and then we mark it all the way to the vehicle with the crash. Once we're done with marking the evidence, we take pictures of the entire scene along with the marked evidence, which is admissible in court, along with the vehicle itself. We take pictures of the inside of the vehicle, the tire tread, because that's possibly a factor. Road conditions, we document the temperature. Was the road dry? Was it wet? Was it snowing? Was it icy? All these conditions are factors in a crash. We take those all into account when we're reconstructing this crash. In this case, it slid on asphalt, dirt, grass, and then collided with a tree. All those are going to be factors in this crash. We're going to come around with the Leica RTC 360, and we're going to do a complete laser scan from the beginning of the scene all the way around the vehicle to the end of the scene. So we use an iPad tablet to talk with the RTC 360. We're doing a double scan, which it goes around twice and takes 5K photos. It does twice because when it scans the first time, that's like a base. And then if, say somebody's walking through the scan and now that point's not in there, it's in one scan but not in another scan, it'll discount those points. So it kind of cleans the scan up for us if we do a double scan. That's why we do that. So it's 2 minutes and 40 seconds for the double scan and 5K photos, which is very fast in the world of laser scanners. Using the iPad, we can take each scan, and while we're here in the field, we can rotate them, put them in the right orientation, and link them. As you'll see later, when we put it into the processing program, there's sites where we had scanned, and then there's links between them. And we're helping that along on scene by linking them through the iPad. Okay, so now we're back from the scene. I've already entered all of the scans into the Cyclone processing software. We did a total of 21 scans while on scene. And what you can see here is all the scans stitched together. At this point, just like the other ones, I can zoom in. And at this point, I can edit prior to making the final LGS product. Let's see what we're going to do today. If you remember from the scene, we have the vehicle wrapped around the tree. But as you can see, like this branch is in the way. Okay, so then I'm going to delete everything on the outside of that. So that's going to cut out more than half my points and make the file half the size that it needs to be. No, it survived just fine. Okay, so as you can see, we cut away all basically the entire tree up top in order to see the scene. If not, we would have been looking through a tree and you wouldn't be able to see anything that you need to see in order to do the reconstruction or to really present a presentable case to the courts. 21 scans on scene, all to make one 3D model. Let's go back. So as you remember, when we were on scene, I placed all these orange cones and painted all of the skid marks white. So as you can see in the scan, they're slightly different color, but they're kind of hard to see. That's why we go out, we paint the sides and mark with cones. So we have a definite skid marks or tire marks or whatever. Here we went over the gravel. Getting a little harder to see. And now when we're coming out on asphalt, if you go to the black and white, it's easier to see on the grass from the green and the orange and the white paint. It's easier to see on grass, but once you get to the asphalt, you want to go into the black and white. That way you can see. So we have orange cones, we have white paint. Here's where the vehicle started in the number 1 lane, drifted into the number 2, and started to lose control up in here. While on scene, you can see there was a weight shift to the left of the vehicle because it was going such a high rate of speed. So you have darker tire marks on the outside, lighter tire marks on the inside, and it started a lot farther back on the left side for the weight transfer.
You're fine.
So it's all preserved forever, you know, even at the scene. If I needed to go back again and I needed something over here. So the way this accident happened, we have 2 vehicles kind of involved, but did not get collided with. One in the number 2 lane, one in the number 1 lane. The suspect vehicle is heading westbound, which is this direction, in the number 1 lane. So she swerved at a very high rate of speed. Witnesses said she was going over 100 miles an hour. Looking at the damage of the car, I tend to believe that. Somewhere between 90 and 100 is just a guess, but that's where I think she was going. She was in the number 1 lane, swerved over into the number 2 lane to swerve around another vehicle, and then there was another vehicle in the number 2 lane somewhere in here, and she swerved back into the number 1 lane, and then tried to stay in the lane and then kind of overcorrected. And when she overcorrected due to such a high rate of speed, she started to yaw to the left. And that's where these skid marks start. She starts to yaw, her weight transfers to the left. And if you can see in the video, she just continues off the roadway, barely misses this mailbox, and then collides head on with this tree with very little skid marks or brake marks, and basically takes the full impact. And if you can tell that this tree went all the way, this is the sunroof. So for court purposes, they can have my edited version, or they can have a completely unedited version and edit it themselves. It's up to them, whichever way they want it. So if they have questions, I make this LGS file. I can give that to them in an LGS file that is pretty user-friendly to where they can make their own measurements and see for themselves from whatever angle they wish. And this concludes the Leica presentation. I'm Detective Thomas Sanford with the West Valley Traffic Section.
Amazing. Now, that was all taken from that sidewalk.
Correct, because I understand there's no other equipment that's associated with it, right? There's no other.
And yet you can go up above and look down at it. It's amazing. Any other comments?
Just how grown-up GC has. Right here. That's good. Be back in contact.
I know this was presented when we approved this and discussed this previously, but that 2-minute, whatever, 40-second scan, how much time and effort, what does that look like doing that manually prior to that?
So do you want Sergeant Johnson to speak?
Yeah, why don't we let Sergeant Johnson, everybody will be able to hear better for the whole meeting. So Sergeant Johnson, did you hear that question?
No, I didn't.
Basically, the question is, what's the change in time associated with processing seed from this system to the previous that we had?
Wow, I hope, hey, thank you, Mayor, City Council. I hope the enthusiasm comes through on this. This has been a game changer. It has cut time in half on scene and then probably about 25% on the back end where Detective Sanford will actually work through the scenes.
Very good. Thanks, Jason.
So the road that morning was closed down for 3+ hours, maybe almost 4. So was that other things, removing the actual car and things like that? This part only took like a half hour, 45 minutes of that time?
Good question, Jace. Sergeant Johnson, are you familiar enough with this particular incident to answer that question?
Yeah, I was out there the whole time. I'm just a little camera shy.
So of the 3 or 4 hours the road was shut down, was this process only about a half hour, 45 minutes of it, or much less?
I would say a half an hour, 45 minutes is a pretty good estimate.
Okay.
Where we would have been with Total Station, probably there 8 or 9 hours just doing Total Station. So when we're out there on a call now for 4 hours, that is for the scene to be exploited. That is for medical personnel to do extraction. That is for the tow. That is for the medical examiner to come out. That is for us to talk to witnesses on scene.
That's good.
Anything else? Hearing no further comments or questions, then we'll go to our council calendar. I think some of you are aware, what is it, Friday? Somehow I lost it. There's, this week is the ribbon cutting grand opening kind of thing at the mall. Is that right?
Thursday at 3.
Oh, yeah, there it is. 3 or 3:30.
Then it says 3:33 to 5.
Yeah. I think they put it on my calendar. That's when they're having me be there to speak.
I had 3 to 5, but it says when I open up the actual thing, it says 3:30.
Okay. I better find out if I show up at 3:30 and I'm supposed to speak at 3.
You see how flexible we are.
Okay. Any other thing on the calendar? Then potential future agenda items, any issues you'd like to bring up?
I have one there.
Yes.
I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of months, and that's the water conservation. We had talked about that some, but we need to probably do some analysis before we make some decisions as what to do. And what I was thinking is if we could get some data as to where our water use is now, citywide, as well as our city buildings. We have no control over that. And then look back and see if we can get data as to what it was, say, 10 years ago or some other point in time, so we can compare, have we increased, have we decreased, both citywide and municipal city use. I think that we could make a goal and then make it happen that as we continue to develop, our water use doesn't go up, it actually goes down without putting that all on new development. That we could, when we have to figure out where we are, where we're trending, and then how to get to where we want to be, so that as we actually develop, we're actually using less water, both citywide and as a city. And I think we ought to look for including that analysis. You know, Flip Your Strip's been around for a long time. I like to know how successful they've been, how many people have participated in that, because that might be a good program or it might be a failed program, depending on what kind of take rate they get on it. And then look at, I think it was South Jordan recently passed an ordinance. Maybe look at what other cities are doing. But I think we could do a lot with water conservation. I don't think we need to have grass where nobody walks on it. But we ought to go both directions, both new development and old development, and certainly city property too. But I just think we need some data before we plan how to proceed. That sounds like a pretty big ask, maybe a lot of data. But you know, I think we ought to do something about water conservation. I want to do it the right way and long term.
I like that. The only one I question is the city usage. But, you know, there's not a lot we can do with city usage. I see that.
Well, we could take out some lawn that we maybe don't need at city buildings.
Well, no. By city, I mean the rest of the city. Citywide.
Well,
I mean,
We
Well,
can
our
do it in
buildings-
Lehigh, so you can't water your lawn twice.
Besides it is-
I mean, before we get to that point where we have to do that or send people out to get tickets or something. And I'd just like to see, well, maybe our water usage has been stable over 10 years or 20 years or whatever, despite the development. Maybe it's increased, maybe it's decreased because people have been more water wise on their own. I'd like to know where we are and where we're moving, and then we can decide where we want to be and how to get.
So Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District has all that information.
Yeah.
All you have to do is say, come present, and they'll come tell us everything. And Granger Hunter has the same for the actual city. But Jordan Valley has what the use per household is.
In the
And they have
city or-
historical. I don't know if they have specifically West Valley, but Granger Hunter would have
So
specific.
that's where we can
Yeah.
get that. I
So
mean,
we could get both.
Wayne can get us to that, right? I can understand what we're.
Yeah,
Sure.
and they can
Very easy to
provide
them.
our water usage, but we're.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our usage, and of course, some of these questions we've examined before, there's a lot of expansion here. There's more of a time frame to look at, so it really is the sort of expansion of already things we've gathered.
And, you know, if we look at, say, we're just looking at West Valley city water use, I think we need to take into account, okay, we use this much at this point in time, we use this much now, but how many more properties and parks and things that we add
Right,
to?
right.
Because
What's
we
the
would expect
total,
it to go
what's the
up.
per household, like, Karen mentioned, and yeah, what's the, even like by use?
Yeah, park acre, golf course acre, city
Residential,
building
commercial.
acres.
Fine. Jordan Valley has it down to even what the climate was that year and what month was the highest use. If it was a wet month, use was down. I mean, they've got it pretty dialed in, so. And Granger Hunter, I think, keeps pretty much the same record. So
My only
I think it'd be very simple to get that.
My only concern with Jordan Valley is if, you know, we may not be the same as their whole.
No, and that's it. They want the specifics, so it'd be Granger Hunter through that same system.
For more accurate.
Mhm.
specific.
Well, I think we've given our staff, you know, the general idea. And if there's anything additional that you discover as you're looking at the data, you want to share, that's great. But I think we can just let them go figure out, is it Granger Hunter Improvement District, is it Jordan Valley? Is it something we come up with some other source?
That's one of the main reasons we got Mr. Rock around, so absolutely. Gather all that, you can do some analysis with the data, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, thanks.
Any others?
I was just gonna mention that it hasn't been quite a week, but Nicole did send out some examples of some municipal committees and boards and commissions and how those were started. It doesn't look like we have any that are administrative or advisory committees that are initiated through executive action, for example, by Mr. Pyle. Most of them have either been ad hoc or done by ordinance. And so, again, it hasn't been a week, so I don't expect you to know know this stuff front and back, but I'm looking forward to discussion on that coming up and whether or not there's interest in formalizing the Healthy West Valley Committee at their request as well.
So the RM zoning regulations, kind of in with our conversation last week, I went out to the townhomes that are going in on the old Brush Street property, so 3500 south and 5600 west. And when you come from the north and you look straight across at it, we said 2 stories up against the homes. Well, they built the homes out of the ground. So they're going to be 2.5 stories above the residents to the sides. So somewhere, I know. So the concrete for the foundation is level or above their 6-foot fence in their backyard. And then they're building the unit on top of that. So I don't know what we need to do to be able to change that so that they have to have the building started the virgin ground level, not build it up to make it higher than the adjacent properties.
So how is that defined? Because yeah, if we say a 1-story building, we can start 10 feet in the air.
Yeah, we said a 2-story building, but it's up a good 6 feet. And I met Mr. Johnson out there last week, and he was thinking it was for storm water, or, you know, get the parking and roads to drain a certain way. But he did say they could have just put in a stormwater pipe and taken it all out to the street. So there's not a legitimate reason why they need to go that high.
Well, there could be. I mean, that was a preliminary, hey, I'm out here looking at it today. and I
Right.
have to look at the plan. So there are lots of things that can affect that. That doesn't make the question a bad question.
Right.
It's just-
But that's just the whole thing, is when do we want to see these, to know what the consequence is going to be, that at the engineering or at the preliminary, when we don't know all the facts and we're making decisions that are going to affect residents next door.
It might be as simple as when we say, okay, 2 stories, no more than 25 feet. I mean, does that feed in with stories?
But if they build the ground up, then it's from that ground or from the adjacent resident property. So if anybody has time to go out and look at that, you may want to look at it, and then we may want to have a discussion of
And
how to
generally
interpret that.
speaking, in that area, coming from the south, the land is sloping down. So it should
And
be
it's the north
just kind
buildings
of
that
the
are so
opposite.
high. Yeah.
So the question is a very good one. And, you know, if we just need more information, there may be legitimate reasons for that. If so, what are they? And what drives that?
Right. You know, sometimes the suspicion or first glance is that, you know, it was cheaper to do it that way. That rarely ends up being the case, just because what you might be saving on one side of a construction cost ends up getting made up for another. So it's not usually that, which is not to say developers won't try to do that, obviously they can. But usually there's going to be some sort of engineering, infrastructure, some of the things like Karen mentioned, you know, whether it's roads, stormwater, could be sewer, could be plumbing, who knows? But still, I mean, it's a good question to examine.
Yeah, so I would just like staff to look at what we need to do to keep it so that it's 2 stories above the residents next doors ground level, not whatever they build it up to be, and then 2 stories on top of that.
Right, and the only modification and all of that, and I'd be doing this anyway with staff. I'm pretty sure that's what you need. Whatever we need to do to keep that intent happening within the bounds of whatever the actual system and topographical reasons are. If they're just doing that because they want to, then that's not what's going
Well,
on.
but
But
we
if
may
there's
not-
some reason that, you know, would prevent them from doing it at that lower level, if they needed to build it up. Obviously, we don't want to prevent that by
Well,
action in the future.
I would not have voted for it had I known they were going to do that. So that's one of those, we almost need to come back and review before it's signed off on, to make sure that, oh, they're going to have to build it up to make this happen, or they're going to have to do this. Now these people are going to have a 10-foot cinder block wall in their backyard instead of a 6, because they build it up so high. They have to have a retaining wall to manage all of their on-site water, and then a 6 foot on top of that. So
Right.
there's things like that that may even stop us at the zoning point to say, yeah, maybe
Well,
we
that's-
shouldn't do that here. It's not
Right, right.
compatible.
And for sure, that's where it would be.
We
Yeah.
determine easily, I mean, I don't know, if it's GPS or whatever, but just like now with all the technology we have, just say, this land is at this number of feet above sea level. And then that's what we're basing that on.
Yeah, I would not just give you an off the cuff answer to that. I need to go back and talk to our guys and say, you know, how hard would that be to do? Or is it not hard at all? Is it something we should be looking at, whether it's hard or not?
Because I think what Karen's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we're looking at land as it is, and we're expecting it to be built
Right,
as
yeah,
it is, not
exactly.
bringing in.
Which is not an
Yeah,
unreasonable
and Phil, yeah.
expectation, for sure. So why did this happen? Should we be doing some, should we be looking at that program?
And what's the catch? That we can catch it before.
Right, yeah.
No, you're governed by what topography was before.
And you can walk out on what it was and see what they built up. So,
Well, the concept here is that, you know, we have an expectation. And we think we're communicating it very clearly. But many people out there can figure things out. And sometimes you can figure out a way around that requirement. And I'm not saying that's the case here, but what I'm saying is maybe we, in part of this, we need to refine
Right, the examination before.
our definition of, you know, we don't want it more than 2 stories above or 1 story above the homes that are next door kind of thing,
Yeah.
or however. So a lot of times, until it's tested, we may not know. And I've seen that where we've had to go back other times and say, no, what we really meant, what we wanted is this, so let's refine that.
well, and that's why in the ordinance, I wanted to say exactly what we intend instead of,
So
there'll be a
while
gray area.
while you're
interpretation.
examining that, look at our definition and say, could we clarify that so that it's not, so there's no ambiguity on the part of those who read it.
Sure.
And we specifically told them only 2 stories, so I don't know how we fix that for the people, the residents that were around there, said, oh, yeah, 2 stories sounds great, now it's 2.5, almost 3.
Just have to go in and build the land under their houses. so
Yeah.
they're up higher.
Interesting. Okay, any others? Oh, some good ones.
Great.
Okay. Then council reports. Oh, you didn't have a meeting.
Not meetings.
Holiday weekend.
Went to the
Would you like to do that? I'm a little biased. You were there.
I did notice that all the news stations covered it and presented it after they covered it. Many of them cover it, but they don't present it on the news.
All of them, yeah, for being a holiday, I thought we had great turnout, a great program. It was nice to have some federal representation as well as state, county, and city, of course. And, you know, now that we have revealed this and made it clear that we're going ahead, we just need to gather up some money and get it built. Enjoy it.
Now, several things I do need to say. One, the media exposure, Sam and his team were great, did a great job. Nancy Lord in putting the program together. And I don't know who all else was involved in that, but people. Yeah. Oh, yeah, staff people, there were multiple ones, but those were the 2 that kind of interacted with me to represent them and their staff. And then we did have our US Congressman, a county council member, 2 state representatives. And then, of course, there were local business people. And so that you are aware, when you mentioned the funding, and this is an issue that we've raised enough money to basically cover that. Our challenge has been that each week it seems costs are going higher. So we may be a little off depending on when they actually put stuff in the ground. But as of right now, we basically have the funds. Now, actually, it's not all in the city coffers. I still have to write the city a check from the Veterans Foundation. And I've assured them that that will be coming. They don't have to start spending it quite yet, but Wayne and I've had that conversation. I'm just gonna write a $300,000 check.
Your presentation when you hand it over. Giant check. Giant check.
No, we'll let the camera come up close on the little check.
You can have the Bailey sisters and Wayne to reprise the people to wear. Very. Sure.
Okay. But yeah, it was, we did have a few veterans there, representatives of VFW Post and others, and I invited a couple of veterans in my neighborhood that I knew were interested.
We have representation from the military too.
Oh, yes, the Utah Department of Veterans and Military Affairs. And sometimes I say it backwards and say military and veterans affairs, but it really is veterans and military affairs. And most of our major donors were represented. With that, there's no need for a closed session. So anything else before we close here? Oh, maybe one comment I will add, having sat in here. For me personally, this meeting room is not nearly as good as the council chamber, both in sound and audio quality and on video quality. For me, it's a lot better in there. So my vote would be to do both meetings in there. The rest of you, I've been spoiled. Yes, I understand that. Okay, but I sure liked it a lot better in there. It was a lot easier.
Doing both, we gotta go, we'll have to consider public coming early for the regular session. And how they would get in without disrupting the meeting.
Oh, they just don't. Yeah, they come in and not talk. Same when they come late to the meeting. Just don't.
I don't know, Mayor, over the last year, I've also gotten used to the sofa.
So in terms of ease, it'd be better if we all just were home.
We do have a couple of council members that are there, and I expect clearly over, here in the future that I will avail myself of that option. Because it is more flexible, and it may even work where someone has, gets off work late, and rather than coming here and waste that time, they can just pull out their iPad, sign in, and immediately join and listen while they're in their car or while they're at work if they want. So there are a lot of benefits to this new technology.
Hopefully they can work in the car. They don't drive in their car and be on Zoom at the same time.
Hands-free.
Well, if it's hands-free, it's just like listening to the radio.
But if you want to contribute, you should pull
Sure not.
over. Sorry, I pull over a lot. I'm like, I don't want to end up in a tree. So-
Well, pulling over is better than getting pulled over.
For what it's worth, I kind of like being in here. I don't know why. Maybe just habits or feels right. It's kind of a more.
Well, they got a ways to go. It took us quite a while to get the sound.
Working in here. We're in there.
It's working very well.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with being in there or in here. Either one works for me.
Well, we'll see what others say, but it was sure nice having that screen right there.
Oh,
I mean, that was, it spoiled me.
That's the
No
big
question.
helper.
It's just a lot nicer. Unless you could hook one of those. up to them.
We probably can. But this was, we wanted to do, what we wanted to have all of our options, just like we had before. So that's why we're doing it, testing it, fixing it, putting it in place. So yeah, we probably can do that too. Well, it might take a little doing or ordering or adjusting, but
Any other comments?
I like the size of Nicole's, whatever ours in
the what?
the size of Nicole's little
Oh,
screen.
yeah.
The ones in there is too big. So if you get any in here, small.
Okay, then with that, I think we're done, so.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn is in order and was made, and without objection.